Hi, welcome to this episode of ComSpeak. Today we have with us Rashmi Soni. Rashmi heads corporate communications at Vistara, India's youngest airline and my favorite. Welcome Rashmi and thanks for joining us on ComSpeak.
Thank you, Amith. Thank you for having me on the show.
We're glad you could make it. In the next few minutes, we're going to ask you various questions about your professional career, the way you chose to be in corporate communications, and things you've done differently over the last many years. So tell us about how you got into corporate communications and this journey that started over 20 years ago.
Well, Amit, that's a very interesting story because I never had gone to a mass comm school. Neither I have a PR agency background. So I was working with this company called Hughes Software Systems back in mid-90s. And this company was going public with India's first big book building issue. And they wanted to set up a corporate communication team. So they just advertised a few openings through their internal job posting program. And I applied for the executive corporate communication role. And then I was interviewed and I got selected. So that's how I got into corporate communication, and that's where the journey began.
Interesting.
So I worked with them for 8.5 years, and I always treat Hughes as a university that I've learned so much from. I used to report into this person called Jai Bikram Bakshi. He is an entrepreneur now, and I learned a lot from him actually, and then there was the head of HR, Adesh Goyal, but his communication fundamentals were incredible. So till date, I call him my mentor. For any professional advice that I need to take, I actually go to him. So, these were the people I was working with, and since I was part of a very small team, so my role was not restricted. I would do everything, from event management to, supporting my boss for public relations, managing the agency, doing CSR, Marcom, everything that we can do.
You become a jack of all trades and master of some.
Yeah, truly. And then, from executive corporate communication to team leader corporate communication, that's how I grew, Right. So whatever little I know about communication today, it's actually the foundation is from there.
Interesting. And then what happened after Hughes Software? Where did you spend the next 10 years before you went into your current job? Tell us more about your journey in telecom, largely, I guess. So tell us about that.
So, these years, like 20 plus years, I would say were quite enriching, rewarding and fulfilling. Because I'm lucky to have worked with some of the well-known global brands like Adobe, Ericsson, and Hughes Software Systems, and now, and then Tata's, for the last 7 years I've been working with Tata's, and in fact, a few months ago I have completed 5 years at Tata.
So the airline, 2 years prior to that in the
2 years prior to that, I was working with Tata Teleservices.
Right.
And I've worked with certain people who are very established and highly acclaimed leaders, like Shantanu Narayan of Adobe Systems. Before that there was Bruce Shizen, then Naresh Gupta. Then in Tata's I worked with Dr. Mukund Rajan also. So, learned a lot during this entire journey.
So, after spending several years in telecom and technology, you moved to aviation. While communications is similar in many sectors and industries, the way each industry functions is so different. So, did you do something to really pull up your socks and learn more about the world of aviation when you moved from telecom, or how did that transition take place?
So, as I said that I was working with Tata Teleservices, and it was close to 2 years, and then I was just thinking that it's kind of getting boring, because all this while I was just working with IT and telecom, and that's the business that I started to understand a bit. But when this job was posted on the Tata intranet, I looked at it and I said that let me just try, see how this industry is so glamorous, everything is just so interesting about this. So let me just see that what the JD says. And as you know that, the fundamentals of corporate communication remain the same.
Right.
These are completely industry agnostic. You just have to learn about the business that you are communicating for, and then you apply those principles on top of it. So I said that, okay, let me give it a try. So I applied for that position, and then a few people interviewed me, and then the founding CEO, P-Tech Yo, also interviewed me, and that's how I gotten into aviation.
An amazing brand has been built in the last 5 years. I was not a Vistara user in the first couple of years, and then I began to use it, and I love that brand. And a lot of credit to building Vistara's reputation, the earned media it has got, goes to the corporate communications team led by you. So tell us, what are the things you did differently at Vistara, given that you said you got into the brand when it was being set up, being built. What are the things you did differently versus your previous jobs to establish this brand as a well-reputed brand in the minds of Indian travelers?
The 2-3 things that we focused on was that, perception management through proactive PR. Because initially when we started the airline, we didn't have a lot of marketing budget to promote. So we said that, we have to drive the brand visibility through proactive PR. So, a lot of interviews and a lot of those stories where, we're plugging in our brand and stuff like that. So that was the beginning. And then what is continuous is the relationship building with all stakeholders.
So what has been the most challenging part of your job in the last 5 years, given that it's a brand new airline, a completely new brand, new sector for you? So what have been the challenges that you faced, and how did you overcome some of these challenges?
So one is that, before Vistara, I had worked with all the B2B companies.
Right.
So never interacted with customers so much. Here in this role, I'm managing the in-flight magazine also, which is a customer communication channel. So the kind of input that we receive from the customers, at times they are really excited about the kind of content that they read. At times they, find the smallest of the mistakes also. So in one way that gives a lot of motivation to us that, okay, whatever we are delivering to the customer, they are reading it. And they are just, going into the details also. On the other side, we are always on the toes.
I make sure every month I'm on a flight, I read the magazine, and I feel proud to see a corporate communications person's name in the magazine inside covers, which is very rare for most of these magazines to have a corp com person's name, which is a cool thing and good. So what do you see is the future of careers in aviation public relations? For youngsters getting into PR today, what does the future look like for careers in public relations in the world of aviation? Can you throw some light on that?
So it's actually now it is in a phase where it is just taking a different evolution now. Digital coming into picture, and there is so much of information overload that is there, and it is a challenge for the communicators to ensure that I'm on top of everything. What my suggestion would be, to young communicators is that, keep acquiring knowledge, not only about the brand that you are communicating for, but the related industries also, because that makes you versatile. And second is that, because, owing to the profile that we handle, we mostly work with the senior management team. And it's a very empowering role also.
Right.
And as they say that, with power, there comes the responsibility also. Right. So it is the responsibility of all the communicators that, we need to conduct ourselves well, because our reputation travels with us.
I'm going to pick on two words you use, saying acquire a lot of knowledge, acquire knowledge. What are the tips for the younger generation, the millennials today, who have different ways of acquiring knowledge, given you come from a few generations prior to the youngsters today? What are the 2 or 3 ways one should acquire knowledge?
Leverage the technology, definitely, but not at the cost of human interactions. Because, PR is all about building relationship. So, invest time in meeting with people, learning from them, sitting through discussions, engaging with your seniors, and try to have, interactions with your global peers also. Leveraging technology is good, but don't just rely on those 140 characters, Go deeper, read a lot in newspapers also. I think print is never going to die, When you want to read something really interesting and
India.
go into details,
Yeah.
then just go for print.
The other thing you oversee besides communications and Insight magazine, you manage CSR as well, right? We'll move out of the Vistara ambit for a little while. Tell us about one CSR campaign across the board from any campaign across India, Indian brands that stood out for you and you really were inspired by. Share with us if you have one such campaign that people can go back and learn that case study for their own good.
So when I believe Jago Re was one campaign of Tata's that completely stands out for me.
Tata Tea.
Tata Tea, yeah. There were a lot of social messages and it was a comprehensive campaign. So it was just not, if I look at from a company's point of view, the external audience or the people were looking at it from a social messaging perspective. But internally, for the employees of Tata, there was an element for the CSR team, there was an element for the marketing team, there was an element for the PR relations team, and so on and so forth. Similarly, I would want to talk about another very favorite campaign of mine, which is Adobe Youth Voices. So Adobe Youth Voices was a campaign where the marginalized youth across the world were given digital tools and training to use those tools to comment on the issues of their communities. And I was responsible for launching it in India. And when we collected the videos from those young people, and when we presented that in San Jose, it was such an overwhelming experience that if you give them the 21st century tools, what all they could do with it. So these two campaigns would remain very, very close to my
Thanks
heart.
for sharing those. I'm sure they'll inspire people to go and look them up and learn from these campaigns as well. Jago Re is more recent and more famous. Moving from the professional world to some aspect of your personal life, tell us about your childhood, where you grew up, which school did you go to, and what it was like till your college days.
Well, my dad was in Indian Navy. So I was born in Delhi, but then went to various coastal cities, Vizag, and then Bombay, Kochi, and then finally came back to Delhi. I studied in Naval Public School everywhere, yeah. Right. And then in Delhi, I did my college from Gagi College.
And then you did your PG DBM in HR, you said, and then began as an HR person but moved to communications later on. Wow. So you grew up in various Indian coastal cities, which is actually fascinating and brings a different dimension to people's growth and learning versus somebody who's just lived in one city all his life or her life, which is cool. We'll talk about other PR campaigns as well. Pick up one global campaign from an aviation brand. It could be an aviation campaign that stands out for you, or you feel that, wow, this is a campaign I wish I had worked on, I wish I had the chance to work on. If it's not aviation, it's fine. You can talk of another brand, another sector as well. But share with us one campaign that you think a youngster in PR should study, should read and learn about for his or her own good.
Smarter Planet by IBM. So it is not aviation, but I was very fascinated with that campaign because it used to, back in 2011 or 12 when this campaign was launched, it used to talk about the futuristic technologies and the sustainable world. So back in those times, just imagine those people had thought about those things, and it was just not about the good for all. There was something that they were promoting, that these product and services we would be delivering. So there was a business connect to it. Nothing is working for the company if there is no business connect. So it was a very good very holistic campaign, and it was also something that I used to read a lot about back in those times.
I know you have a crazy hectic job with pressure not only from within the company but from outside. I'm sure as an aviation comms person you have requests and demands from all kinds of people, from journalists to CEOs and others all the time. What do you do to unwind? How does Rashmi Soni take time off from work, and what do you do then?
Well, I travel solo. That is, and that's the perks of being in airline industry, that you get discounted tickets.
Right.
So I like to travel. I like to explore new places. I try out new food. So that's what I do in my free time. I take 2 vacations in a year, 1 week each, in the first half and the second half. I try to do that. And Europe is my favorite destination.
You mentioned a few names of bosses that you worked with, from J. Vikram Bakshi to your first boss at Vistara as well. Tell us about one of the bosses that stood out for you. It could be one of these two or somebody else. And what is it that you learned from them that was unique beyond communications that you still hold in good stead today?
So, I can talk about my, present boss, the CEO of Vistara, Leslie Tung. He is a man of few words, and as a communicator, I actually at times I just step back and I try to understand that I think as communicators it is important to also listen to people and not just jump into every discussion and not give your opinions on every matter.
I have one more Vistara question for you. You've worked on several campaigns in the last 1 year, but more than that over the last 5 years, and I am familiar with some of those campaigns, including launching the Retrojet in its own, pads on board flights, and various other campaigns. Tell us about a couple of campaigns that you hold dear, which you worked on all of those, I'm sure, but which you worked more than the others, more passionately, that one can learn from. And all the questions are linked to younger people, others in the business of public relations, learning from these stories and learning from these anecdotes. So tell us about one or two campaigns at Vistara that really stood out for you and you felt that they were the campaigns that you put your heart, mind and soul into.
So starting with the setting up of the airline, so the first aircraft arriving in, and then launching the operation, showing your product for the first time to the world. So that was something that was very exciting because when we launched the airline, we organized 2 events, one in Delhi and one in Bombay, and we had the presence of the who's and who's from the industry, and Mr. Ratan Tata also graced the occasion, and he talked about Vistara, that this was the vision of JRD Tata. So we all had our goosebumps that day. So that is one, and besides that, the Deepika Padukone campaign, Fly the New Feeling, then the Retrojet, which was part of the Tata's 150th anniversary celebration. So we had a special livery and the retro uniform, so which was really well appreciated by our customers, and is the most photographed aircraft in India. And pads on board, of course, so this started as a PR campaign for just 2 months, and then it became a business offering now. So this is something that we have done.
What's your message to fellow communicators? What is it that other communicators like you, young, old, mid-level, should keep in mind to excel and do well in their communication profession? Is there some advice you want to share with fellow communicators?
We get so busy with our daily schedules that we just don't, at times we don't get opportunities to step out and interact with our peers, and we feel that since I'm working with this particular industry, I just don't need to know about the others. So I said this earlier also, and I'm again reiterating this, that it is very important to get connected with your fraternity, because during times of crisis they come and they support you.
We've come to the end of this interview, but like I mentioned a few moments ago, we'll do a quick rapid fire with you if you're ready for it. I have about 7-8 questions, and you can answer them as briefly and quickly as you can.
I'll try to.
What's your most trusted brand beyond the ones you've worked with?
No doubts about that. Tata's.
What's your favorite book of all times?
Good to Great by Jim Collins.
Previous to the current job, which was the favorite company you've worked with before this?
Adobe Systems.
Really? Who's your professional role model?
Ratan Tata.
The best boss you ever had?
Whatever little I know about communication, I think I owe it to all the great bosses that I've worked with, so I wouldn't take one name, that will be very unfair.
The communicator that you admire the most, a fellow communicator?
I'll take my friend's name, Rachna Panda. She conducts herself so well. I really admire her.
And my last question to you, describe Rashmi Soni in 3 words.
That's a difficult one. Well, actually, I think I'm the optimist of the highest order. I am persistent, and I'm an explorer.
Nice. I would say calm, composed and cool. Thanks for coming to be on this show, Rashmi. It was great having you. We look forward to meeting you offline as well in the future. Have a great journey ahead at Vistara and beyond in the future. That was Rashmi Soni, the Head of Corporate Communications and CSR at Vistara, a Tata Singapore Airlines venture in India. She was as candid as it could get. Thank you for viewing. Thank you for watching. Keep watching ComSpeak on Founder India. Thank you.